Hi, welcome to Kingdom Seekers Circle. We're starting our journey in Matthew. When we open the Gospel of Matthew, we're not given a miracle, or a parable, or a sermon. We're given a list of names. For many readers, Matthew 1 might feel like something to just try to get through before the real story really begins. But Matthew doesn't see it that way. He chooses to open this Gospel this way because this genealogy is not background material. It's the opening argument. Matthew 1, verse 1 through 6a is carefully written, highly selective, and deeply theological. In just a few verses, Matthew tells us who Jesus is, what story he belongs to, and why his arrival matters, all before Jesus ever speaks a word. So our goal here today is simple. What does the text say? Why does Matthew say it that way? And what stands out that gives weight its context? So we'll let Matthew speak for himself. Reading the text, and I especially want to do this for these first 3 videos because the names are important, but I won't always do this for each passage in Matthew. For the case today, let's start. The book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, and Isaac the father of Jacob, and Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers. And Judah the father of Perez and Zerah by Tamar, and Perez the father of Hezron, and Hezron the father of Ram, and Ram the father of Amminadab, and Amminadab the father of Nahshon, and Nahshon the father of Salmon, and Salmon the father of Boaz by Rahab, and Boaz the father of Obed by Ruth, and Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of David the king. And Matthew stops here intentionally before continuing, so we'll stop here where he wants us to pause. The book of the genealogy is a loaded opening. Matthew begins this phrase that sounds simple but carries enormous weight. The book of the genealogy, and this wording echoes the Old Testament, especially Genesis. It signals that what follows is not merely a family tree, it's a record of God unfolding purposes in history. Then Matthew names the subject, Jesus Christ. Before Christ becomes a title we're used to, remember that Christ means Messiah, the Anointed One. Matthew isn't proving Jesus is important here. He is announcing who he is from the first line. It's like his thesis statement to his gospel. And then comes 2 defining identifiers, son of David and son of Abraham. Matthew could have started with Adam just like Luke does, but he doesn't. He starts with promise. Abraham represents God's covenant to bless the nations. David represents God's covenant to establish a king. And Matthew is telling us Jesus stands at the intersection of promise and kingship, blessing and rule. Everything that follows explains how he does this. Abraham to Judah is a chosen line, not a perfect one. Matthew moves pretty quickly too. He says Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, and Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers. Now notice something important here. Matthew does not list every possible name. Biblical genealogies are selective and with a purpose. They're about shaping a particular story, not just preserving data. When we reach Judah, Matthew pauses slightly because Judah matters. Judah is not the firstborn, and he's not the most righteous, but he is the one through whom kingship is promised. Matthew reminds us of Judah's brothers, but he narrows the line down to Judah alone. And the Messiah comes not from the collective greatness, but from God's chosen path, even when that path is messy. Matthew then does something unexpected. He mentions Tamar when the story gets kind of uncomfortable. Judah, the father of Perez and Zerah by Tamar. In ancient genealogies, they were rarely named. Matthew names her, and he expects his readers to recognize this story. Tamar's story is complicated, painful, and morally tangled, and Matthew does not sanitize it. He does not glaze over it. Why does she get included then? Because Matthew is not presenting a genealogy of moral heroes. He's presenting a genealogy of God's faithfulness that works through that human brokenness. Tamar's presence tells us God's promise is not derailed by human sin, and the Messiah's line moves through judgment, mercy, and restoration. Matthew could have omitted her, but he doesn't. This adds weight to it. So from Perez to Nahshon, there's quiet faithfulness. The genealogy continues steadily through names many readers skim through. Hezron, for example, Ram, and Aminadab, and Nahshon. But these names represent generations of waiting, centuries where the promise remained alive, even when no king sat on the throne yet. Matthew doesn't rush this section because it shows that God's plan is not hurried. The Messiah's arrival is prepared through long obedience and quiet continuity. And this pattern breaks again with Rahab and Ruth. Both are outsiders. Rahab was associated with Jericho, an enemy city. Ruth is a Moabite, a people group often viewed with suspicion, So yet Matthew places them directly in the line leading to David. This matters because Matthew is writing to show that Jesus' identity is rooted in Israel's history and story, but that story has always had room for grace, inclusion, and also redemption. And the Messiah's family tree already contains the seeds of a mission wider than Israel alone. But Matthew still hasn't reached his main human figure yet. David, the king. This is the turning point of the genealogy. The section ends with this deliberate emphasis. Jesse, the father of David, the king. Stops there, okay? Only David receives a title, not Abraham, not Judah, and not even Boaz. David the king. Matthew wants this name to land with force. Everything before has been moving toward him. Everything after will flow from him. By stopping at David right here, Matthew highlights that kingship is central to Jesus' identity, the fulfillment of God's promises to establish a throne. This is not just ancestry. It's not just royal legitimacy. But Jesus is not stepping into the story just randomly. He arrives as the rightful heir to God's covenant purposes. So why does this even matter? Well, God works through real history. God keeps promises across generations. God is not ashamed to work through broken people. And God prepares his king long before the crown appears. Before Jesus heals anyone, before he preaches his sermon, before he performs a miracle, Matthew tells us this is the king God has prepared all along, and the story begins not with power, but with names.